The temple bells had not rung for 3 days. Yona stood at the edge of the sacred platform, her 4 arms hanging loose at her sides. Below her, the crystal city of Orath spread out like a dream. Towers of pale blue glass caught the light of the twin suns. Gardens floated between buildings, held up by the gentle power that the Eternal Ones had given them long ago. Everything was beautiful. Everything was perfect. And everything was wrong. She was the High Keeper. Her family had served the Eternal Ones for 200 generations. Every morning, she would enter the inner chamber and speak with them. They would appear as shapes of golden light, warm and kind. They would tell her what her people needed. They would guide her. They would protect her. But 3 days ago, she entered the inner chamber and found only darkness. The Villani were not a species built for worry. They had soft bodies and gentle minds. Their skin was thin and showed the colors of their emotions: blue for calm, green for joy, purple for love. For 10,000 years, they had lived without fear. The Eternal Ones handled all the hard things. War was something that happened to other species. Death was rare and peaceful. The Villani spent their lives making art, writing poetry, and studying the stars. They had forgotten what it meant to be afraid. Yona remembered now. She turned and walked back into the temple. The halls were empty. The other keepers had gone home to their families, hoping that tomorrow would be different, hoping that the Eternal Ones would return and explain that this was just a test. Yona did not share their hope. She had seen something in the inner chamber that the others had not. A message, the last words of the gods. The door to the chamber opened without sound. Inside, the walls were black stone that had once glowed with divine light. Now, they were cold and dead. Yona walked to the center of the room where a small pedestal stood. On it rested a crystal, the record stone. It held every message the Eternal Ones had ever given to her people. She touched it, and words appeared in the air before her. Children of Orath, we have watched you grow. We have kept you safe from the darkness between stars. But safety has made you weak. You have forgotten how to stand on your own. You have forgotten how to survive. We cannot stay forever. A parent must let their children walk alone, even if they might fall. This is our final gift to you, the chance to become strong. We are sorry. We love you. Goodbye. Yona read the words again and again. Each time, they hurt more. The Eternal Ones had not been taken from them. They had chosen to leave. She fell to her knees. Her skin turned gray, the color of despair. For a long moment, she stayed there, alone in the dark, feeling the weight of 10,000 years of peace pressing down on her shoulders. Her people did not know how to fight. They did not know how to build weapons. They did not even know how to be angry. And now they were alone in a galaxy full of hungry things. The council met the next morning. 12 Villani sat around a curved table in the Hall of Voices. They were the leaders of their world: scientists, artists, philosophers, good people, smart people, people who had never faced a problem they could not solve with thought and patience. Yona told them what she had found. She showed them the message. She watched their skin change colors as they understood what it meant. This cannot be true, said Miro, the youngest counselor. His skin was bright red anger, though the Villani rarely felt it. They would not abandon us. We have done nothing wrong. We did nothing at all, said Hana. She was the oldest among them, her skin pale with age. That is the problem. We became children who never grew up. And now, our parents have left the house. What do we do? Asked another counselor. We have no army, no weapons. We have never needed them. We must learn, said Tejo. He sat at the far end of the table, apart from the others. He was strange among the Villani, a scholar who studied dark things. War, violence, the history of species who had destroyed themselves. The others thought he was odd. Some thought he was sick in the mind. But Yona had always respected him. Learn to fight? Miro laughed, but there was no joy in it. We are not built for violence. Our bodies are weak. Our minds reject cruelty. It would take us 1,000 years to become warriors. And we do not have 1,000 years. No, Taiho agreed. We do not. Silence filled the hall. Outside, the suns continued to shine. Children played in the floating gardens. Artists painted pictures of the beautiful sky. The Villani went about their lives, not yet knowing that everything had changed. Yona stood. Her skin had shifted to a pale white determination mixed with fear. Then we must find another way, she said. Somewhere in this galaxy, there must be someone who can help us. Someone who knows how to protect the weak. Someone who remembers how to fight. Hana looked at her with old, tired eyes. I know of such a species, she said quietly. The Eternal Ones spoke of them once, long ago. They left a warning in the deep archives. A species from a small world around a yellow star. They are called humans. Why have I never heard of them? Yona asked. Hana's skin turned dark gray. Because the Eternal Ones told us to stay away from them. They said humans were dangerous. Not evil, not cruel, but dangerous in a way that other species cannot understand. They called them the survivors, the ones who would not die, the butchers of the cosmos. Quote, the words hung in the air like smoke. Butchers, Miro repeated. And you want to invite them here? Hana closed her eyes. I want us to survive, whatever that costs. 3 years passed. The Villani tried to change. They built walls around their cities. They created machines that could shoot beams of light. They trained their young people to hold weapons and stand in lines like the ancient pictures showed, but it was like teaching fish to climb trees. Their bodies were not made for fighting. Their minds rejected violence, like water rejects oil. Some of them tried so hard that they became sick. Others simply could not understand why anyone would want to hurt another living thing. Taiho did his best. He read every book about war that existed in the archives. He studied the battles of dead species. He learned the words tactics, strategy, flanking, retreat. But knowing the words and doing the thing were very different. We are not soldiers, he told Yona one evening. They stood on the walls of the capital city, watching the stars appear in the darkening sky. We can pretend. We can dress up and hold weapons. But when the moment comes, when we must look at another living creature and choose to end its life, we will hesitate. And that hesitation will kill us. Yona knew he was right. She had watched the training exercises. When the young Villani faced the practice targets, they froze. Their hands shook. Some of them cried. They were not cowards. They simply could not understand violence. It was not in their nature. The Eternal Ones had removed it from them long ago, breeding peace into their very blood. The Villani had also searched for the humans. They sent signals into the void, aiming toward the yellow star that Hana had mentioned. But space was vast, and they did not know the correct frequencies. Their messages flew into the darkness and disappeared. No answer came. Perhaps the humans were gone. Perhaps they had destroyed themselves, as violent species often did. Perhaps they had never existed at all. And the Eternal Ones had simply invented them as a warning. Then the Hollow arrived. The first attack came on a colony world called Ceres. It was a small planet at the edge of Villani space, home to 2 million people. They were farmers mostly, growing the blue grain that fed a dozen worlds. They lived simple lives. They had never harmed anyone. The Hollow did not care. They came from the darkness between stars, where no light reached and no life should exist. Their ships were not built. They were grown. Massive things of bone and metal and stolen flesh, twisted together into shapes that hurt the mind to look at. Inside them crawled the drones, creatures that had once been 100 different species, now merged into a single, hungry swarm. The Hollow had one purpose: consume. They ate everything: metal, stone, flesh, thought. They took planets and stripped them bare, using the matter to build more of themselves. They had been doing this for 1,000,000 years, spreading across the galaxy like a disease. Only the Eternal Ones had kept them away from Villani space. Now there was nothing to stop them. Ceres died in 6 hours. The colonists tried to run. Their ships were fast, but the Hollow were faster. They tried to hide, but the Hollow could smell their fear across the void. They tried to fight, but their light beam weapons did almost nothing. The Hollow simply grew new armor to block the beams. They adapted. They evolved. They learned. 2,000,000 Villani screamed and died, and no one came to save them. Tejo received the news at midnight. A single ship had escaped Ceres, a small transport carrying 43 survivors. They had watched their world burn from orbit. They had seen the Hollow tear their families apart. When they arrived at Orath Prime, they could not speak. They could only shake and cry and stare at nothing. The council met in emergency session. This time, there was no argument, no debate, only fear. "How many of them are there?" Miro asked. His skin was the white of terror. "We do not know," Tejo replied. "The Hollow are not a single army. They are a swarm. There could be billions of them. Trillions. They have been growing for longer than our species has existed." "Then we are dead," said another counselor. "We cannot fight them. We cannot run from them. We are simply dead." Hana slammed her hand against the table. The sound shocked everyone into silence. The old Villani had never shown anger before. "We are not dead yet," she said. "We still have one option. We must call the humans." "We have tried," Yona said. Our signals were polite requests," Hana interrupted. "We asked nicely if anyone was listening. We did not beg. We did not scream." She pulled out a data crystal and placed it on the table. "I have prepared a new message. It contains everything: the location of every Villani world, the nature of the Hollow threat, and a promise." "What promise?" Tejo asked. Hana met his eyes. "Anything they want: resources, technology, service, whatever it takes." Her voice cracked. "We are a dying species, asking for help from the only ones who might be able to give it. We have no pride left. We have no options left. We have only hope, and even that is fading." Yona took the crystal. She looked at it for a long moment, thinking about what it meant. If the humans came, they would change everything. The Eternal Ones had called them dangerous. They had called them butchers. What would it mean to invite such creatures into their home? But then she thought about Ceres. She thought about 2,000,000 people dying in terror. She thought about the children in the floating gardens, playing without knowing that monsters were coming for them. She thought about what she was willing to sacrifice to save them. "Send it," she said. "Send it on every frequency we have. Send it until someone answers." The message flew into the void. It was not a polite request. It was a scream, and somewhere, across the vast darkness of space, something heard it. Admiral Day One was drinking coffee when the message arrived. It was 3 in the morning, and he was sitting in his office at Seoul Metropolitan Command, reviewing reports from the outer colonies. Boring work. Important, but boring. The galaxy had been quiet lately. Too quiet, some said. Day One did not mind the quiet. He had fought in enough wars to appreciate peace. His communication screen lit up with an urgent signal. He set down his coffee and opened the channel. "Sir, we received something strange," said the young officer on the screen. Her name was Sua, and she worked in the Signal Intelligence Division. "A transmission from outside known space. It is not in any language we have encountered before, but our systems translated it. You need to see this." Day One nodded. and the translation appeared on his screen. He read it once, then again, then a third time. The message was simple. It described a species called the Villani. It described their peaceful nature and their long history. It described how their protectors had left them. And it described the Hollow, a swarm of consuming monsters that were eating their worlds one by one. At the end, there was a plea. We have heard of your species. We know you are warriors. We know you are dangerous. We do not care. We are dying. Our children are dying. Please. We will give you anything. We will do anything. Just help us. Day One leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. Humanity had met other alien species before. Some were friendly. Some were not. The friendly ones usually wanted to trade. The unfriendly ones usually learned very quickly that attacking humans was a mistake. Earth's history had prepared humanity for the galaxy in ways that other species could not imagine. While other intelligent beings evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and abundant food, humans had crawled out of a planet that tried to kill them every single day. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanoes that blocked out the sun, predators with claws and teeth, diseases that killed millions, and worst of all, other humans. Earth was what scientists called a death world. Everything on it was either trying to eat you, poison you, crush you, or burn you. And humans had not just survived, they had conquered. They had tamed fire, split atoms, and reached for the stars with bloody hands. Other species looked at humans and saw something terrifying. A creature that should not exist. A being that treated death like an old friend instead of an enemy. The Villani had called them butchers. And they were not entirely wrong. But they were also not entirely right. Day One picked up his communicator and called Colonel Hyun-Ki. The colonel answered on the second ring. He did not look like he had been sleeping. Men like Hyun-Ki rarely slept well. His face was covered in scars, souvenirs from 3 interstellar wars. His eyes were calm and cold, like frozen lakes. Admiral, he said, what do you need? A species called the Villani has asked for our help. They are being exterminated by something called the Hollow. I am sending you the details now. Hyun-Ki read the message in silence. His expression did not change. When he finished, he simply nodded. How many ships? I am thinking the entire 7th Fleet, 300 warships, 50,000 Marines. And your Reapers. The Reapers were humanity's elite soldiers. Special forces trained for the worst situations imaginable. They were not just warriors, they were artists of destruction. Other species told stories about them in whispers. Some called them demons. Some called them monsters. Hyun-Ki called them his children. When do we leave? The colonel asked. As soon as possible. The Villani are dying while we talk. Hyun-Ki smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then let us stop talking. The next morning, Captain Sua briefed the senior officers on what they knew about the Hollow. It was not much. They appear to be a hive-mind species, she explained, pointing at images on the screen. Billions of individual drones, controlled by a central intelligence. They consume organic matter to reproduce and grow. Their technology is biological. They grow their ships and weapons instead of building them. Weaknesses? Asked Lieutenant Yonseo. She was young, but sharp, with quick eyes and quicker hands. Unknown. The Villani report that energy weapons are ineffective. The Hollow adapt too quickly. Within hours of encountering a new weapon, they develop resistance to it. What about kinetic weapons? Hyun-Ki asked. Bullets. Explosives. Things that punch holes instead of burning them. Sua paused. The Villani have not tried that approach. They do not use kinetic weapons. They consider them primitive. A ripple of laughter went through the room. Humans had heard that before. Other species always thought human weapons were crude and outdated. Then they discovered that a simple metal projectile moving at high speed could kill just about anything in the galaxy. Contact the Villani, Day One ordered. Tell them we are coming. Tell them to hold on as long as they can. He paused and looked around the room at his officers. These men and women had fought and bled for humanity. They had seen friends die. They had killed without mercy and mourned without shame. They were not heroes in the clean sense. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were human. The Villani called us butchers, he said. Maybe they are right, but today, we are going to be their butchers. We are going to teach the Hollow what happens when you threaten a species under human protection. He stood and placed his fist over his heart. For Earth, for humanity, for those too weak to fight for themselves. The officers echoed the words, and somewhere in the void, 300 warships began to move. The human fleet arrived on a Tuesday. Yona watched them emerge from hyperspace, their ships appearing like dark shadows against the stars. She had expected something grand, golden vessels with shining lights, like the ships from the old stories. Instead, she saw gray metal boxes covered in weapons. Ugly things. Brutal things. Ships built not to impress, but to destroy. Beside her, Tejo stared at the display screen with wide eyes. They came, he whispered. 30 colony worlds had fallen to the Hollow in the past year. Billions of Villani were dead. The swarm was now only 3 systems away from Orath Prime. The Villani had nothing left, no fleet, no army, no hope. They had been counting the days until extinction, and now, 300 human warships hung in orbit above their world. The first shuttle landed in the central plaza of the capital city. Yona stood at the front of the welcoming party, her skin shifting between blue and white, calm and fear, mixed together. She did not know what to expect. The Eternal Ones had called humans butchers. She imagined monsters with sharp teeth and red eyes. The shuttle door opened. A man stepped out. He was shorter than Yona had expected. His skin was brown and smooth, without the transparency of Villani flesh. He had only 2 arms and 2 eyes. He wore a gray uniform with metal pins on the chest. His face was covered in old scars, but his expression was calm. "High Keeper Yona?" he asked. His voice was deep but not threatening. "Yes," she replied. "I am Colonel Hyun Ki. I command the ground forces of the 7th Fleet. We are here to help." Yona looked past him at the other humans leaving the shuttle. They were all different sizes and shapes. Some were tall, some short, some had pale skin, some dark. They carried weapons on their backs and belts, long metal tubes that Yona did not recognize. "Thank you for coming," she said. "We did not know if our message would reach anyone." Hyun Ki nodded. "It reached us. Now show me where the enemy is." The humans did not waste time. Within hours, they had set up a command center in the palace. They spread maps across tables and talked in quick, sharp words that the Villani translators struggled to follow. They brought down equipment from their ships, vehicles, weapons, supplies. They moved with a speed and purpose that the Villani had never seen. Tejo watched them prepare and felt something he could not name. It was not fear. It was not admiration. It was closer to awe, but darker. These creatures knew exactly what they were doing. They had done it many times before. Lieutenant Yonseo approached him with a smile. She was young for a human, with short black hair and bright eyes. "You look worried," she said. "I am trying to understand," Tejo replied. "Your weapons, they are so simple. Metal projectiles? Explosives? We abandoned such things thousands of years ago. And how is that working out for you?" Yonseo asked. There was no cruelty in her voice, only honesty. Tejo had no answer. "The thing about energy weapons," Yonseo continued, "is that they can be adapted to. Shields, absorption, reflection. There are 100 ways to stop a beam of light. But a bullet?" She patted the weapon on her hip. "A bullet is just a piece of metal, moving very fast. You cannot adapt to physics. You can only die." The Hollow arrived 3 days later. They came in a wave of black shapes, blotting out the stars. Their ships screamed as they entered the atmosphere. Not engine noise, but actual screaming. the sound of a million stolen voices crying out in hunger. The sky turned dark as their shadows covered the land. The Villani in the shelters wept with terror. They had seen what the Hollow did to other worlds. They knew what was coming. Then the humans opened fire. The first volley came from the ships in orbit. Not beams of light, but missiles, thousands of them, streaking down through the atmosphere like falling stars. They struck the Hollow fleet with explosions that shook the ground. Fire bloomed in the sky. Pieces of destroyed ships rained down like burning rain. The Hollow did not stop. They never stopped. Their drones poured from the surviving ships, falling toward the surface in endless numbers. They were nightmares made flesh 15 feet tall, built from bone and metal and the bodies of consumed species. They had too many limbs and too many eyes and mouths that opened in places where mouths should not be. Colonel Hyun-ki watched them come from the front line. His soldiers stood beside him, weapons ready. They did not run. They did not shake. They simply waited. "Hold," he said calmly. "Let them get close." The Hollow crossed the first marker. Then, the second. They were 500 meters away. Then, 400. Then, 3. Fire. The sound was deafening. 1,000 rifles firing at once, sending streams of metal into the charging swarm. The Hollow fell in waves. Their bodies burst apart as bullets tore through them. They tried to adapt, growing thicker armor, but the humans just switched to heavier weapons. Grenades. Rockets. Things that exploded inside them and ripped them apart from within. Sergeant Jin-woo led his squad into the chaos. He was screaming something, a battle cry, that meant nothing and everything. Beside him, Private Bo-ra fired her rifle until it overheated, then pulled out a knife and kept fighting. A Hollow drone grabbed her shoulder with a claw the size of her arm. She did not run. She pulled herself closer, shoved the knife into its eye, and twisted. Taeho watched from the command center, unable to look away. The humans were not just fighting. They were enjoying it. They laughed as they killed. They sang as they died. A medic took a wound to her stomach and used her own hands to hold her insides in while she continued treating other soldiers. "Why do they not retreat?" Counselor Hana asked, her voice shaking. "They do not know how," Yona said quietly. "This is what they are. This is what we called." The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the ground was covered in bodies, mostly Hollow, but humans too. The survivors did not celebrate. They simply began collecting their dead, carrying them with gentle hands despite the blood covering everything. Colonel Hyun-ki approached Yona. His uniform was torn and stained. There was a cut on his face that he had not bothered to treat. "That was the first wave," he said. "There will be more." Yona looked at the field of corpses. Thousands of Hollow, killed in a single day. More than the Villani had managed in 3 years. "How many of your people died?" she asked. 212. "I am sorry." Hyun-ki shook his head. "Do not be sorry. They died doing what they were born to do." He looked up at the sky, where more Hollow ships were gathering. "And we are not finished yet." The war lasted 97 days. Every day, the Hollow came. Every day, the humans pushed them back. The battles blurred together into one long nightmare of fire and blood and screaming. Cities fell and were retaken. Mountains became graveyards. Rivers turned red and stayed that way. The Villani watched and learned things about the universe they had never wanted to know. They learned that some species were born to create, and some were born to destroy. They learned that peace was not a gift but a luxury, paid for by those willing to do violence on behalf of others. They learned that the humans they had called butchers were also the only reason they were still alive. Admiral Day-1 sat in his command ship, studying the holographic map of the war. The Hollow were endless. For every 1,000 killed, another 1,000 appeared. His fleet had destroyed over 1,000,000 drones. And still they came. This was not a war that could be won by killing soldiers. "We need to find their center," he said to Captain Sua. The hive mind. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Sua nodded. She had been working on this problem for weeks, analyzing hollow movement patterns and communication signals. I think I found it, she said. Deep space, between two dead stars, a structure the size of a small moon. Organic, pulsing, everything traces back to it. Day one looked at the coordinates. How many ships guard it? Thousands. Maybe tens of thousands. The hollow protect their brain better than anything else. Then that is where we go. Colonel Hyun-ki volunteered for the final assault. Of course he did. His Reapers had lost half their numbers in the fighting. But the survivors were harder than ever. They had been forged in blood and fire, and they were ready to end this. I need soldiers who are not afraid to die, he told his troops the night before the attack. Because most of us will not come back. The hollow core is defended by their entire species. We will have to fight through billions of them to reach it. Sergeant Jinwoo stood at the front of the formation. His face was covered in fresh scars. His left hand was missing 2 fingers, lost to a hollow blade 3 weeks ago. He had refused medical leave. We did not come here to live forever, Jinwoo said. We came here to kill monsters. Let us go kill the biggest one. The fleet jumped to the coordinates at dawn. The hollow core hung in space like a tumor, a massive structure of bone and flesh and metal, pulsing with dark life. Around it swarmed more drones than the sensors could count. They filled the void like a living cloud. A wall of death between the humans and their target. All ships, Admiral Daewon commanded. Attack. The battle was the largest humanity had ever fought. 300 ships against an enemy that numbered in the billions. The humans did not hesitate. They flew into the swarm with weapons blazing, carving paths of destruction through the endless horde. Ships exploded on both sides. Fire lit up the darkness between stars. Hyun-ki's assault ship punched through the outer defenses and crashed into the surface of the core. The Reapers poured out before the ship stopped moving, firing in all directions. They were deep inside enemy territory now, surrounded by horrors that wanted to tear them apart. They did not slow down. The inside of the core was worse than the outside. It was alive walls of flesh that moved and breathed, floors of bone that cracked under their boots. Strange organs pulsed in the shadows. The screaming never stopped. Jinwoo's squad led the way. They fought through chamber after chamber, leaving trails of dead hollow behind them. Private Bo-ra took a wound to her chest but kept firing with one hand while the medic tried to stop the bleeding. 2 soldiers fell. Then 3 more. Then 7. By the time they reached the central chamber, only 12 of them remained. The hive mind waited for them there. It was not what they expected. Not a monster. Not a brain. But something in between. A vast pool of liquid flesh that filled the chamber from wall to wall. Eyes floated in its surface. Thousands of them, all watching the tiny humans who had dared to enter its heart. Set the charges, Hyun-ki ordered. His soldiers moved quickly, placing explosives around the chamber while the hive mind watched. It did not try to stop them. Perhaps it could not believe what was happening. Perhaps it had never faced an enemy willing to die for victory. Jinwoo finished setting the last charge. His hands were steady, even though he knew he would not survive the next few minutes. The hollow were already flooding into the chamber behind them. There was no way out. Charges set, he reported. Timer is ready. Hyun-ki looked at his soldiers. 12 of them. 12 out of 50,000 who had come to this place. They were bleeding and broken and exhausted, but their eyes were clear. It has been an honor, the colonel said. The honor was ours, Jinwoo replied. The detonation was visible from 3 star systems. The hollow core exploded in a burst of fire that turned night into day. The shockwave destroyed everything within 1,000 kilometers. And with the core gone, the hive mind died. Across the galaxy, billions of hollow drones suddenly stopped. They stood still, then fell, then rotted. Without the mind to control them, they were nothing but meat. The swarm that had terrorized 100 worlds simply collapsed into silence. The war was over. 3 weeks later, Highkeeper Yona stood before the human delegation at the Treaty of Oreth. The great hall was filled with Villani and humans together. An alliance sealed in blood. Admiral Day One sat at the main table, his face tired but peaceful. "We owe you everything," Yona said. "Our lives, our world, our future. How can we ever repay you?" Day One thought for a moment. "Remember us," he said. "Remember what we did here. And if you ever meet another species that needs help, do not hesitate. Pass it on." Yona nodded. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the day the humans arrived. "Why? Why did you come? Why did you sacrifice so much for strangers?" The Admiral smiled. It was a sad smile, but also a proud one. "Because we know what it is like to be alone," he said. "We know what it is like to face extinction with no one to help us. Our world was cruel. Our history was cruel. We survived because we had no choice. But now, we have a choice. We can let others suffer as we did. Or we can make sure no one ever has to feel that alone again." He stood and offered his hand. Yona took it. "The Eternal Ones called you butchers," she said softly. "Maybe we are," Day One agreed. "But we are also builders, protectors, friends." He squeezed her hand gently. "The universe is dark and full of hungry things. Someone has to stand in the way. Someone has to fight. If not us, then who?" Yona had no answer. She only knew that she was grateful. Behind them, through the great windows of the hall, the twin suns of Orath set over a world that was still alive. Somewhere in the floating gardens, children played and laughed. Not knowing how close they had come to oblivion, they would never know. And that was the point. The humans had not asked for thanks. They had not asked for payment. They had simply come when called, fought until they won, and asked for nothing in return except one thing: remember. And the Villani did. For 10,000 generations, they told the story of the day the gods abandoned them, and the butchers saved them. They built statues and wrote songs, and named their children after the heroes who had died in the darkness between stars. They remembered, and they passed it on, because that is what the humans wanted. Not glory, not power. Just the knowledge that somewhere in the vast, cold universe, someone remembered what they had done. Someone remembered that they were not just butchers, they were human.